Like most British people, I'm a huge racist, so you might expect me to be leery about a new Souls-like from a Chinese developer based on ancient Chinese legend, but you know what, I'm all for it if it means not having to play another fucking historical fantasy game based on Greek or Norse mythology, or Greek then Norse mythology. Don't make that face at me, God of War. So what's Black Myth Wukong about, game science? Well, there's this monkey king, Sun Wukong, who, oh not Journey to the fucking West again. What, was 16th century China so busy inventing fireworks it only had time to write one fucking book? Andy Serkis beat you to doing Journey to the West, and he lives in a fucking cave. Anyway, if you're not familiar with Journey to the West, Sun Wukong is this monkey dude who's so ridiculously overpowered, if he were a D&D character, you'd assume he was shagging the DM. He's immortal and can lift mountains and run like the wind and leap the largest plot holes in a single bound. None of which is of much use in the prologue to Black Myth Wukong, where he takes on the armies of heaven and ends up getting his banana-flavoured shit pushed in. We play as a young monkey 2,000 years later who's probably Wukong's reincarnation or something, and our job is to travel across the land collecting Wukong's 6 lost artifacts so he can be restored to full power, Castlevania 2 style. And that is officially the extent of the plot I understood. I didn't have the first fucking clue what was going on in the stories of each individual chapter. Why is a fat monk putting me in a little bag? Why am I now being aided by a little hairy pig who came out of a drum kit? I imagine it makes more sense if you are more familiar with Journey to the West or other Chinese myths. I was probably like a non-English person trying to jump into EastEnders from season 97. And honestly, I don't need context to appreciate the spectacle of twatting the absolute fuck out of a giant flaming bear, in the non-homosexual sense. So as I say, it's a Souls-like. Is it though, Yachts? I've been hearing there might be some dispute on that. Ugh, well, let's not get bogged down with semantic pedantry. Yes, you have an Estus flask equivalent, and yes, it refills at checkpoints, but it also respawn all the enemies, but it's not one big interconnected open world, and you don't lose anything when you die, making it a Category C Souls-like, Demon Souls variant subcategory 9. Of course, there's one thing that qualifies it as Souls-like above all else, and that's being pretty bloody hard. Not unreasonably so, at least not at first. I remember thinking early on, boy, I'm glad it's not falling back on the usual modern Souls-like strategy of having every boss just fucking spaz out at you like a washing up glove on the end of an industrial lathe, and then about 40 hours later, while fighting a fucking giant flaily-armed spider on 16 cappuccinos, I was thinking, well, that's several hundred eggs on my face. Still, even then the core combat wasn't quite as punishing as some of its contemporaries. You know how Sekiro was basically learn to parry the game? Wukong is learn to dodge the game, so I guess we know what's going to spark the next Sino-Japanese war. You don't even have a parry, actually. Maybe I should have said subcategory 9B. It's the all-dodge experience, Dodge City, east of Get the Fuck Away Junction, and home to a very profitable cheese industry, because the other half of combat is tipping the scales as much as possible with spells and superpowered attacks. The only reason you should be using the standard light attack is to build up one of your supercharged heavy attacks that hit like a middle-class tax burden. And there's literally a Bluey's magic xylophone spell that puts the target in timeout for a second while you have a little sippy and hang Christmas ornaments on their nose. So I never ran into any serious difficulty walls, and I appreciated that there was a lot of personality on display, the main character notwithstanding. They spend the whole fucking game practicing their brick wall impression. But the standard enemies are all colourful animal people who keep talking the kind of smack that's very amusing to cut off with a washing pole to the chops. And as I said, the boss fights are a highlight, even lacking the context for what we had done to earn the ire of the cast of Kung Fu Panda. They all had distinct personalities and subtly different motivations for wanting to pull our breakfast out through our nostrils one agonising cornflake at a time. But, subtly shift tone of voice from grudging respect to weary sarcasm, the boss fights are the highlight in the sense that an illuminated marker boy would be the highlight of an ocean of expired gravy. White Mass of Gravy is a game, and thinking about it, this could apply to a lot of AAA games I've played, that I would have liked a hell of a lot more if it had stripped out everything but the boss fights. Maybe separated with a little animation of our monkey going up a tower like in Mortal Kombat. As it is, each chapter sprinkles the boss fights and relevant story moments across a vast map themed around one kind of terrain. Forest in Chapter 1, desert in Chapter 2, then snow, the usual Mario biome checklist, which seem to have been optimised for looking nice in screenshots rather than, being interesting or intuitive to navigate. It's impossible to tell just from looking what rough terrain you can actually walk on, because there's more invisible walls than a STEM career path for women, and there's very little variety in the environments. I'd be having the idiosyncratic Souls-like experience where one frequently goes, oh god fucking damn it, I'm actually making progress. Now I need to walk back to the last checkpoint and find out what all the other paths led to. But the moment I do that, I look around for a moment and then go, I have no earthly fucking clue where this is anymore. I'm completely turned around and every path looks the same. It's like I'm trying to find my car at SFO long-term parking, just with not quite so many suspicious-looking hairy people hanging around. If game science were setting out to prove that the Chinese games industry can produce pointlessly overindulgent spectacles just as blatantly padded with copy-pasted filler as their contemporaries in the Western and Japanese AAA industries, then consider that point well and truly proven, I suppose. As for if I'd recommend Purple Helmet Wukong, non-committal noises. Combat hits, level design misses. I'm also not a fan of how equipment works. One set of armor might have a bonus that really meshes with my playstyle, like plus 5% damage whenever I get a zone out stiffy, but the next set of armor might have something completely useless, like plus 10% defense whenever the level design doesn't suck ass. But the second set will have higher base defense stats, so I can't not equip it is like having to pick between a can of Coke or a can of Pepsi laced with life-saving diabetes medicine. Alright, let's say this. Yellow Taxi Wukong is the best video game I've played that's based on Journey to the West. As for if it's the best thing based on Journey to the West, that I'm iffier on. I mean, there's that old TV show for a start, and I've seen some very impressive novelty birthday cakes.